Up next on Way of the Renaissance Man, another visit with our resident guru of happiness, Dr. Joel Wade.
Welcome to the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast. This is a show about ideas, personal empowerment, and celebrating the rational life. Our goal is to help each other discover the tools needed to better focus our minds, integrate our thoughts with actions, and live the lives we really want. I'm your host, Jim Woods.
Happiness isn't easy. In fact, learning how to be happy can be one of the most difficult things a person can do. In this episode, Jim visits with our resident guru of happiness, Dr. Joel Wade. Dr. Wade's first podcast appearance last year elicited some of the best comments we've had on any show. So, it was about time for another conversation with this exceptional individual. This time, Jim and Dr. Wade discussed the history of the positive psychology movement, how Dr. Wade got started in the field, and why this field resonated with him as a young man. The conversation then gets into details on how you can implement practical techniques on how to increase happiness, including how to focus your mind on what actually makes you happy, how to look at a problem from the outside, and why focusing on the negative is not a good problem-solving technique. Jim describes this episode as another home run podcast for listeners. And we're pretty sure you'll agree. And now, here's Jim's conversation with Dr. Joel Wade.
So last season, I interviewed someone who got the most amount of email and the most amount of complimentary remarks on how interesting and how good the podcast was. And so I thought I owe it to everyone to bring him back and to dig a little deeper into his massive brain power and compassionate voice. And that man is Dr. Joel Wade.
Wow.
And welcome again to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, you are, for lack of a more appropriate term, you're my guru of happiness on the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast. So your specialty, of course, is happiness, what it is, how to achieve it, and you've done. Your professional career has been spent on studying this very difficult problem that people have.
Yeah, which actually started 40 years ago when I first met Nathaniel and Devers Brandon, and I didn't know that's what I was aiming for, but they're the ones that inspired me to go down this road, study psychology, become a psychotherapist, and eventually a life coach too, and then in the turn of the century, Martin Seligman opened up the whole field of positive psychology, which significantly also increased the research base for what makes a happy life, what makes a life that works well, that's satisfying, what kinds of things bring. That would have been, I think he was the American Psychological Association president. I think it was 1998, but I may be off by.
So this is a relatively nascent kind of field of study, isn't it? Yeah, I find that interesting because there's been, roughly 100,000 years or so of modern human beings, and yet we've only spent about 20 years trying to figure out what really makes us happy.
Yeah, and that's what shifted the field in a significant way, because he had he brought some powerful people to the table. But there were people like Ed Diener and other people, Carol Dweck, who's written the book Mindset, and Nathaniel and Devers, that have been working in this field. But his bringing positive psychology into the world as a specific thing was a real shift.
And what is it about that shift that kind of inspired you to, what resonated with you? Why did you choose that field?
Well, when I read Seligman's book, Authentic Happiness, I felt like I had come home. Because what originally inspired me was, here's Nathaniel Endeavors, and I'm a 20-year-old college student, and they're talking about what can taking ownership of your life so you can make a happy life for yourself. And they didn't have the research base. It was much more philosophical and experiential and their clinical experience. But now with Seligman's research work and his colleagues and bringing that all together into a single focus, that just, as a practitioner, having the research to stand on was a very significant thing for me. Because if I'm saying what I believe or what I think would be helpful for you, that's one thing. But if I can know that, if you just think of, at the end of each day, think of 3 good things that happened that day and why they happened, and practice that for a while, the chances are, statistically, from the research, you're going to increase your well-being. And it's going to make a significant change. I can feel more confident that, that's something you can do right now, and it's going to help you.
So,
and there's other things like that.
So back up on that just a little bit, because I want, in this show we want like actionable ideas.
Yes.
And you're the man with a lot of great actionable ideas.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone to go to your website. It's drjoelwade.com,
yes,
correct?
Yeah. DRJOELWADE.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll have a link on my show page, because I want everyone to go there.
Yeah.
Because I want people to understand that if you want to take control of your life and not just control of your life because you're suffering, but control of your life because you want it to be better. Mm-hmm. You can do some stuff. So the 3. So you're saying write down like 3 things about your day that you really liked.
At the end of the day, think of or write down or talk with your mate or your friend or what are 3 good things that happened today. And sometimes if you're having a really hard time, it might be hard to squeak out 1 or 2, but stay with it. Because if you it'll take you a couple of minutes, and by practicing that, you're aiming yourself at what you can feel grateful for the day, of what went well, and it can shift your perspective, especially if you're caught up in ruminating about what's bad, what's not working. You're charting a different course. You're blazing another neural pathway.
You're reconditioning yourself to focus on the positive.
The
things that matter that do make you happy. Now, what about the opposite of that? What about someone who is? We all know them. You work with them, I'm sure, clinically. Because I know people that just focus on nothing but the negative. They don't. They have a beautiful life. But they don't really know they have a beautiful life. From the outside, to me, they're doing great. They have a great career, great family. But inside, they're burning up. So how would you, if someone's listening to that right now that has that kind of mindset, what do you recommend they do?
So what I've found most common with that kind of choice or that kind of practice, those kind of habits, is they often start with thinking that somehow this will be good. Somehow by thinking about what's not going right, I'm problem solving. There's somewhere in there's a solution. And I just have to keep dwelling on what's wrong. If I take my eye off of what's wrong, then I'll be denying reality or I'll be avoiding the problem. I got to face the problem.
Yeah, we always been taught we got to tackle our problems head on like that.
Yeah, but what you're doing in that case is you're inside the problem trying to solve it. And we can't solve a problem from inside the problem. We have to have a vantage point outside of the problem in order to have perspective on it, to be able to bring in possible solutions that we haven't already tried.
Of course,
over and over.
That's not the easiest thing to do.
That's not the easiest to do, but that's what the 3 good things is. One thing that can help pop you out. Another thing is you can simply say, I'm having the thought that. Rather than being in the thought, you can say, I'm having the thought that everything's awful right now. I'm having the thought that this will never work. By doing that, it sounds really simple, but it gives you a little bit of distance from being consumed with the thought or the problem.
Right. It's identifying the thought.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all you need is, now I see, I could do this over here. Here's this other option I hadn't thought of from inside it. So it's not, sometimes life's hard, and there's a reality. Living a happy life doesn't mean being cheerful all the time or getting what you want all the time. It's a lot about problem solving effectively. And so if you're stuck in ruminating or negative thoughts, you want to be able to give yourself a little emotional distance so you can look at it from a place where you can problem solve.
Is that where the techniques like mindfulness kind of techniques come into play?
Yes.
Because I found that when I do that, I practice some modest form of like mindfulness, which is basically just quieting my mind and identifying when I'm thinking these stuff that I shouldn't be thinking, or not that I shouldn't be thinking necessarily, but that I'm not aware that is taking over my mind, my brain. But if you do identify, hey, this is just a thought I'm having. And that's the distance. And I'm glad you said that, because it's something I've been working on and something that's been helping. Because when I feel kind of anxiety or stress or anything like that, all you're doing is you're feeling that. You're not stepping back and saying, oh, wait a minute, it's just a thought. It could be gone in 2 seconds if I let it go.
Right. Or if it's not gone in 2 seconds, maybe there's some important information to explore, but you have to explore it from a place where you're not in it and consumed by it.
An objective kind of perspective, if you will. I do know that is difficult, especially if a person has any kind of mental pathology, any kind of mental illness. Now, do you do anything? Do you work in that field at all?
Sure. Well, here's what I've found. So there's yes. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and that's a big part of my training is dealing. And I've worked a lot with trauma and physiological elements of trauma. What I've found is there are some mental troubles that seem to be more physiological, and even with those, this is a tricky one because this whole field is in flux right now. You would get the impression that a diagnosis is a diagnosis. It's kind of like, well, you have this bacterial infection. Here's the antibiotics. It's not that clear cut. It's not that clear cut. There's so much we don't know, and there's just the beginnings of genetic testing for different things and different patterns. So right now, all the diagnoses is descriptions of what is observed. And so you can have somebody that has a hallucination, say. Well, maybe they have what's now labeled schizophrenia. Maybe they've just had something traumatic happen, and that's shattered their sense of self from the trauma. Maybe they haven't slept in 3 days and they're starting to hallucinate because our system, there's a lot of different explanations for that, and just the phenomenon itself doesn't tell you any of that. And so we're just on the cusp of getting deeper understanding around that. But with anything like that, even though it may not solve the problem fundamentally, anytime you can bring more consciousness and more sort of self-ownership to your whatever you can do, it's going to improve your situation. So even if you have a severe depression, still bringing consciousness to what you can do, focusing on what you do have control over, and trying to put what you don't have control over there, can still improve your situation. It may not make it all better, but it always helps. So it's the consciousness that we're able to bring to whatever the situation is we're in. That's what if we can gather up that strength as much as we can, and it'll be much harder for one person that's struggling with some severe things than it is for another person, but the principle still is a helpful one.
It's like there's only one really solution to it, which is to try to think your way through it, bring the consciousness awareness to it, and be as objective as you can. Even as hard as that may be to some people, that's what I found that to be the case with a lot of people that I've talked to that have some issues like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm by no means any kind of a therapist or anything like that, but just being aware of the issue itself.
Yeah.
And it's a pervasive issue in society. It seems like it's getting worse and worse.
Well,
I don't know if that's true or not.
I think what's happening, and this is just my hypothesis, the stigma has lifted. So it may have not been any worse in the past, but nobody would talk about it.
Now we can talk about it
Now
without
we can talk
fear
about
of
it.
reproach.
And so, and there's some good and bad with that. Because the good is, it's great to not have the stigma, because shame is just destroys.
It makes you
lives.
hide further from it.
Yeah, it makes you hide. It's the poison, and so there's no reason to feel ashamed for having been traumatized or having a genetic condition that you were just born with, or
no one's ashamed that they have a heart condition or
exactly.
cancer or anything like that.
They might be bummed out by it, but it's not like a personal
not a moral
thing.
Right, exactly.
And so it's important that these things are not moral failings, but then it's also important to think, okay, given this, there's a reality here, and we can talk about it. What can I do? Given this situation, what do I have? Who are the good people and the resources I have? What are the strengths that I have? What are the things that I've built in myself, in my own consciousness, I can draw from? What are skills in completely different areas that maybe I can translate? Because sometimes we have skills in areas and we don't think, oh, I can apply this skill over here too.
Yeah, sometimes people are really good at one thing.
Yeah.
Like it might be a great musician or something like that, but their personal life is all messed up.
Yeah.
But if they applied the same kind of focus that they did on their music to their personal life, they'd be virtuosos in their personal life as well.
Exactly.
And it's, I mean, I know we just scratched the surface on this again. There's so much to talk to, but so tell me, if I'm a person who really wants to just commit myself right now to becoming happier, what should I do? Like, how should I go about getting your work and incorporating it into my life?
Well, you can. I have books, Mastering Happiness and the Virtue of Happiness. I have my podcast, the Mastering Happiness podcast, and I also work with people around the world via phone and Skype. I have people in every. Not Antarctica. I don't have any clients in Antarctica, but just about everywhere else I've worked with people. So it's possible.
So you're available to help.
I'm available for that. I work with businesses because these principles are also very applicable to having a business environment that functions really well. It's not about just everyone. It's not about playing. It's not about, we have a little Nerf ball basketball hoop in the conference room,
yeah,
so
it's not
we have
Google
fun.
1998.
No, it's okay. I really am looking forward to going to work because people treat each other well. I have the tools I need to work well, and we get along, and we make a good team. We're a good team together, and so those are principles that are very, very functional for a business nowadays, and that's part of what I do.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you again for. I have no doubt this is going to be another home run podcast for my listeners, and I love it. Thanks a lot.
Well,
Appreciate
thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.